Welcome to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us with Brandon Handley. Because you're already great at everything else, why not fatherhood too?
Hey there, and welcome to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. This is Brandon Handley. I am the creator and founder of Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. I want to say thank you for choosing to spend your time with me today on Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. I also want to just encourage you, if you could, to go over to the podcast on iTunes, download it, subscribe to it, and leave a review if you have found any part of this at all to have an impact on your life. That will help others to find the show and listen to it and get the same type of enjoyment that you are out of it. Also, if you are a father and if you're looking for a place that you can go celebrate fatherhood or perhaps even share some struggles and get some advice or find some like-minded men, I strongly encourage you to stumble on over to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, the private Facebook group, and ask to join. I'll let you right in. That's going to do it for right now, guys. And please stay tuned for today's podcast. Hey there, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. I want to thank you for joining me today for Jason Kestler's interview. He and I talk quite a bit about what it is to have a work culture that consists of feeling like a family. He really looks at his employees as being individual entrepreneurs themselves. One of the other things that we talk about quite a bit is the influence that Toastmasters has and how they use it at the workplace to really humanize everyone and learn more about each other, having a platform in which they're able to do that. Very, very enjoyable there. Also, Jason and I talked about, reconnecting with his father and what life lessons and really how that changed through the trajectory for him. And also, we go over how the experiential versus strictly academic education go on. These were all a lot of really awesome points that Jason and I hit on, and I think that you are going to enjoy it. So here we go. Guys, how you doing there? This is Brandon Handley, and I am with Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, and we are doing an interview with Jason Kestler, who is a highly successful entrepreneur and financial services executive with over 23 years of success within marketing and numerous verticals of the financial services. He is a proven thought leader within the industry and is widely recognized for his ability to innovate stale processes and procedures to increase efficiency, amplify company strengths, and create market distinction and increase revenues. He has a unique but effective management style that incentivizes success through accountability, which has enabled him to recruit and retain top talent within the industry. He specializes in sales, small business development, wealth management, fixed annuities, retirement planning, insurance, strategic planning, organizational development, advertising, lobbying, SEC, FINRA regulation, leadership, process engineering, and human resources. And today, Jason is currently the owner and CEO of Kestler Financial Group. Jason, thanks for popping on with us today. Really appreciate you being here.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. I don't know who you were just describing, but you have my name right.
Yeah, that guy sounds awesome.
That guy sounds awesome. I wish I knew him.
Right on, right on. Before we get started, what I really like to do is I always like to find out kind of what you're celebrating today. What is something that is awesome and amazing in your life today that you'd like to celebrate?
Other than just waking up and breathing today, another beautiful day.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm really blessed in the sense that you mentioned it. I do own my own company, but I never really think of our business like that. I leave my family at home and I come to my family at the office. I have the pleasure with working with, some amazing people, and I just had lunch with one of my executives, and they never cease to amaze me. Sometimes I think that there's no new good ideas out there, and just a few minutes ago I heard some great news about our industry and a concept that I know that will certainly help us grow our business. So I'm celebrating the fact that I get to work with a lot of awesome people that I consider family.
Awesome. That is something to celebrate. Well, I'm just going to loop around one question I had down there. What's exciting about your industry today since you brought that up?
It's so cool. We work with uh, all different types of advisors. We're really more of a wholesale style business today. We're going to be opening up a direct retail channel here in the next few months. We've got about 5,000 to 6,000 financial advisors that work with our organization in a given year. And what's cool about it is that there's so many different ways to do what we do. As you can imagine, if between 5,000 advisors, they're not robots out there. They each have their own individual business. They're very much entrepreneurs themselves. And so that's the cool part about our business is there's no two ways of doing things. Everybody does something a little bit differently. But then when you look out further on the horizon, there's millions of baby boomers kind of marching through time, and we are right in the midst of it when it comes to financial services. So the baby boomers are now starting to think, for years they've been talking about, accumulating their wealth. And now they're starting to talk about the decumulation side of their lives. So, and that's right where our sweet spot is. And so the opportunity for us is amazing because we're very much would be considered more of a conservative decumulation style financial services firm. So we're hitting our what I would say our peak earning years.
Okay, cool. Well, that's kind of neat to. I never really hear too many people talk about the decumulation part, but I guess that's because I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I mean people like you and I, we still have a lot of time left. I'm only 43 years old. We still have a lot of time left to save towards retirement. But, those baby boomers are starting to enter those retirement years right now. And the fear is that they're going to outlive the income or outlive their money that they've spent, an entire lifetime accumulating. And that's really where we specialize is helping those retirees plan for that decumulation, making sure that they don't outlive their income.
Right on, right on. I'd love to ask you strategies, but that would supersede this interview, no doubt.
Another day.
Yeah, yes, another day on that one. So look, I think that finance and I think the finance industry is really kind of exciting, but a lot of people may not see it that way themselves. It's because a lot of people just see dollars and cents, and maybe they don't see kind of the freedom or what those dollars and cents really mean. But so when I say that, though, I'm just curious, what inspired you to get involved with this industry yourself?
Well, yeah, great. That's a great question. And I'll give you a very honest answer. I had no interest in getting involved in this industry. None at all. I went to school to study hotel restaurant management. I worked in the restaurant industry. I used to open restaurants for Darden Restaurants, who owned Red Lobsters and Olive Gardens. I opened a couple of Red Lobsters on their behalf right out of school. And then I found myself as a ski bum in Park City, Utah, working inside of the hospitality industry, living the dream of any ski bum, And then,
that sounds great.
A funny thing happened. It was a time of my life. In many respects, I'd try to go back to that time during meditation.
Sure.
But I ended up moving to the East Coast. I grew up with great parents, but my biological parents divorced when I was roughly 2 or 3 years old. My mother raised me, single mom. She was a registered nurse, as you can imagine. There were, I made my own dinner many nights, which basically meant I ate cereal 5 nights a week. But grew up with a single mom, had a relationship with my father growing up, but it was because whether it be geographical reasons or whatever, it was always, I didn't have as tight a relationship with my father growing up. I went to high school and college out in Arizona. My dad lived in Pennsylvania at the time. So I didn't have a tight relationship like most fathers and sons have. So when I had an opportunity to move back east as an adult, this was his industry. He was a retail financial advisor working with clients. I really got to know him as an adult. But watching what he did, the lifestyle that it provided for him and my my step family, I guess you could say, my stepbrother, stepsister. I don't really like those terms step. I have a brother and a sister, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
lucky
yeah.
enough to have, lucky enough to have two mothers, lucky enough to have two dads and lots of
Sure.
grandparents. So,
Sure. I heard somebody
um,
say somebody used the term bonus dad or bonus parent. So that I kind of
that's
liked it.
perfect.
And I said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Yeah, the stepdad." I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, I love it." So
That's perfect.
your
All
bonus
right,
family.
I'm gonna steal that.
Yes, go
Yeah,
for it.
I'm gonna steal it. So I saw that it was the lifestyle that it provided, but my real interest was getting to know my father at a different level that I otherwise hadn't had, that opportunity to do so. So, he brought me in and it kind of wooed me over. He needed some help in his office. And, trust me when I say I've done everything, from sweeping the floors at night to, answering the phones and feeding the copy machine, you name it. And that was, gosh, well over 20 years, 24, 23, 24 years ago.
Okay.
But the interest was never financial services. The interest was getting to know my dad,
Okay.
and seeing what type of man he was, and what made him tick as a father, as a businessman, and ultimately as a mentor. I mean, he's been a true mentor to me.
Awesome. Well,
As I've kind of
just not to interrupt, but when was the separation again? The divorce?
Oh, I was probably I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years old
Okay.
when my
Okay.
parents divorced.
Okay. I'm just trying to put a timeline in my head together. That's all. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So he was an awesome mentor.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't ask for set aside the father figure. Just as a businessman, he was an incredible mentor. I mean,
Right.
obviously there were doors that were opened to me that I probably otherwise wouldn't have been there if it hadn't been for him.
Sure.
He made some great introductions for me early in my career, that have paid off a million times over. But um, the neat thing about working with him is I think he recognized pretty early on that I was the type of person that needed to figure it out on my own, and not rather than standing over me, micromanaging me, telling me that, hey, that'll never work.
Right.
And we laugh about it today, and we laugh about it. And, there are many times I talk about some of the stupid things I've done as far as, my business decisions have been, and I know that he was in the background thinking like, that'll never work. that's a waste of money, whatever it is.
Right.
But he allowed me to experience those failures on my own and really feel the failure. So, but we always then took that step back, and I was able to learn from those. And I think that's, from a father's standpoint, that has to be incredibly tough. I know, I'm a father. I've got two children. I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old son. And there are times where I look at the decision that my children are making or what they're about to do, and you just know it's not going to work, right? It's
Right.
just
Right.
like,
Oh
it's
yeah.
like
Sure.
that's
Sure.
and as long as they're not going to get hurt, or
Right.
they're not going to hurt somebody else,
Right.
I try to let them just do it.
Right.
Is he going to get stitches, or is he just going to get bruised? If he's going to get bruised, I'll probably let it happen. If
Right.
he's
No,
going to get stitches, I'm probably
absolutely.
going to step in.
Absolutely. I love the line you use there. Feel the failure. What a great line. Um, uh,
Yeah.
and I'll just throw out there too. I think that when we network and whenever we get the introductions, it's not necessarily that you got the introductions. You did something with them. I mean, you made them work. You didn't just like get the introductions and I don't know. Right. You got to make those introductions work. It's not like somebody just says, "Hey, here's this person." You get to know them, and you've got to make that relationship work yourself on the end. So a lot of that.
Yeah, I had a lot to prove. I think while I think my father was trying to prove to me who he was as a man. In return, in retrospect, I was probably trying to prove to him who the man I would like to become. So I was making decisions with that type of frame of mind. I wanted him to be proud of me,
Right.
and it wasn't. We didn't have the relationship where he came to my sporting events as a child,
Sure.
because
Right.
geographically he was never there. I was never able to impress him with
Right.
what a traditional son would do. So this was my first opportunity to really try to impress him. And
Right.
that was, I think, the driving force behind a lot of my early success in my career.
Okay. I mean, yeah, there's worse ways to go about it. Um, yeah, I think it's a really cool story, Jason. So I really do. It's great that you got the opportunity to connect with him at a point in life, and it's great that he was. It sounds to me like he was accepting and welcomed that opportunity for the two of you to connect. And what's also awesome is that he was able to impart some wisdom to you, give you some great guidance, and let you fly. And when you talk about like feel the pain or feel the failure and what he allowed for you, I'm going to roll this over into a couple things that I've read on I checked out Glassdoor for your company real quick, and
Hmm.
a lot of that says it's got a culture of true work family, great people, great processes, worth the ride. And the other thing that kind of stood out to me too was people who do well here are protected and rewarded. Is that something you feel like you learned from your father by him allowing you to work on your own, be empowered?
Yeah, and I don't think it's just was just my father's influence there. I think it's really an overall family influence. I mean, I know, and I I finally feel like I have a true sense of family, and I don't think necessarily, especially during my grade school years, I really understood what family was.
Mm,
You know, I was fortunate enough to have great friends, through high school and college and everything else. But there were times where I'm around their families and I'm looking around the table and I'm like, oh, I've never experienced something like this. And don't get me wrong. I mean, my my grandparents have been an incredible role. My mother's a strong-willed woman, and if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be the person I am today. But there is a sense of family that was always kind of missing, that enhanced sense of family. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
that makes sense. I got you.
that that certainly carries over into the culture that I've tried to create inside of our firm. Is that, listen, when the going gets rough, I mean, and it hasn't always been rainbows and butterflies for our company. I mean, we've had our ups and downs,
Sure.
um, but we've always stood by each other. And one of some of the I could talk about revenue and talk about all of the other stuff, but one of my proudest things is our average employee tenure. I mean, we have tenures for a company our size, an average tenure of, I think now probably 6.5 years. That's come down a little bit because we've added a lot of staff recently.
Sure.
But to have people that will stick by you even when maybe we're not celebrating every day because we achieved a new record,
Right.
those are the people that you want to really, really take care of.
Right.
And so I think that's really that sense of family. I mean, you walk through these doors, and there's pluses and minuses of working for an organization that has that family style atmosphere. I mean, you also get harassed like your family, in a good way,
Sure. 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 Sure.
in a good way.
Sure. Sure.
Um, so yeah, I guess that's just a part of kind of who we are, and certainly my sense of family came much later in life, so it's probably newer and fresher for me, and that's absolutely the type of culture that we're trying to push through our company.
Well, that's awesome. And how are you able to create and maintain that culture?
Well, I think it's about getting face to face. As you grow an organization, I'm always a little bit nervous about growing the organization too quickly because you get away from the culture. If you add too many people, the culture gets adjusted. Um, but we spend a ton of time together, and God love our spouses who support us
Mm,
in as much time as we spend together.
hmm.
But it's not about business for us every day. It's every Tuesday, as an example, we do our Tuesday Toastmasters, and the entire company spends an hour locked in our conference room, and we rotate. So everybody in the company presents, for a period of time, and it's most of the presentations are not business. We've got I have a nutritionist on staff she's an auditor and a securities principal for us, but she's also a nutritionist, and she'll get up and talk about what she does in the evenings and how she counsels people on nutrition and things like that. And it's twofold. Really, we get to know the individual, our fellow teammates,
Right.
And then it's also a great experience for them to get up and improve on their presentation skills, because that's what we do for a living. You know,
Right.
we
Right.
stand up and we talk to thousands of advisors every year. So we get a benefit, two-sided benefit. I would say that the side of getting to know your teammate is probably more beneficial, because then that creates, you know, oh, I never knew that about you, Hillary. Let me ask you more questions about that. You know, that
Right.
type of thing. Hey, let's go
Right.
to lunch because I'd like to hear more about what I shouldn't be eating rather than what I should be eating. You know, that type of thing.
Right, right. No,
So,
Toastmasters is wonderful. I've gone to a few different ones, and the benefits are there. What is a? I mean, since we're talking Toastmasters, what is another benefit that you see for your company and the individual of Toastmasters?
um, you know, I don't know if I have a great answer for that. Again, I think it really comes back to um, getting to know a coworker who maybe sits in an office or a cubicle next to you at a different level.
Right.
And I will tell you, there isn't a month that goes by where there's not something that pops up that somebody shares
Nice.
about, shares a piece of themselves that
Right.
nobody else in the office. They might have been working here for 3 years, and they get up and they make this statement and jaws drop to the table. Like, I had no idea. And those are kind of the cool moments
Right.
where people let their guard down.
Right.
Some people are really guarded with their in their personal lives, and that's fine. There's no judgment at all. But when somebody decides to open up and maybe share a little history about where they've come from, or experiences that they've had in the past, that's how true relationships are really formed. It's not just about how much business did you do today, what did how many emails did you respond to, that type of thing. It's the real personal stuff. And we've just kind of created the atmosphere that it's a safe environment that you can do that. And you can learn from one another. And our office is really, really supportive of one another. So if I'm struggling with, XYZ, oh gosh, I remember 3 months ago, David said something at one of his Toastmasters presentation, how he was dealing with it. Let me go back, or he recommended a book or something, so I'll go back to David and say, hey man, I've been struggling with this. Is there something, I know you've been through something similar in your life. Do you have any recommendations for me? And
Nice.
that's, it's a cool deal when you can go to work and just feel comfortable and not feel like you have to create this, air around you that you're somebody that you're not. You
No,
can just be you.
that's great. You've humanized it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's amazing when you can come to work and be that relaxed. That most of our work is done over the phone.
Right.
That really translates well. I mean, people like working with people. People don't like working with fake people.
Right, right. And it's
So,
hard. It's hard. I think it can be hard. And when you do what you've done to humanize it, to let people know that it's okay to be human, and give them a moment to be themselves, they 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 lean into it, and it's pretty
yeah.
cool. They can see that they can see
Yeah.
that they're being accepted for who they are, and that's it's kind of liberating.
Yeah,
Um,
and if you're, one of the core philosophies, if you're not willing to take a risk, this is probably not the organization for you. I mean, we want to take risk takers, and failure is okay, but as long as you learn from it, it
right.
goes back to really what happened with my father and I, is let people go out on the edge as long as they're not hurting any of our clients. As long as, if it's a crazy idea, I've seen really crazy ideas that I would have never signed 10 years ago. Now that I've kind of embraced this new concept that, I've seen crazy ideas really pay off, tenfold.
Awesome. Very cool.
So,
Very cool. Well, let me ask you a question. I know this is a fatherhood thing, but I don't interview too many CEOs. What does it mean for you, I guess on a high level, to be a CEO?
I'm not a, I'm not a huge fan of the CEO title. I got to
Okay.
be honest with you.
Sure.
It does come, um, it, on my business card, I would much rather it say head cheerleader, or, I
That's
mean, I'm just, there's as people get to know me and I interact, there's this air about CEO of this guy that's stuffy, is sitting behind a mahogany desk, and you know pounding the calculator with his right hand and hanging up the phone with his left. That's not who I am. I'm the guy that runs around on. We have scooters in our office. I'm the guy on the scooter, zipping through the hallways.
I read head cheerleader on a scooter, and I thought that it was kind of an inside joke on the website, but it's not.
It's not. I'm that guy that we have skateboards and scooters, and we throw footballs at each other as we're walking by each other's offices. That's just kind of who we are. I'm such an advocate of what we do. I know we do great work on behalf of our advisors and ultimately their clients. I know that we feel their pain every day, and we want our advisors that choose to work with us. We want them to succeed, and we'll do anything we can to help them get there. The CEO thing tends to be more about numbers and profitability and stuff. Like, no, I'm okay with sweeping the floor at the end of the night. If I walk by and the floor is dirty, I'm going to sweep it. I'm not going to walk by it. If I see something that needs to be done, even though it's beneath me from a title standpoint, I'm going to try to do it. Right. The reality is because I'm a little bit removed due to my role and pulled in so many different directions, we have such an awesome team. I mean, you put me on the phone to try to talk to an advisor about a specific product or something. Did the UPS man just get to your door?
I have no idea. I was like, I'm not expecting any. My wife's downstairs, so she knew I'd be on here, but it's probably the UPS man. Somebody coming. The dog sounds like she's.
Thank you, Amazon.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Now I got to figure out if I'm going to edit this or not. I'm not going to lie, Jason. A lot of times I like to keep them in because these are just they're real conversations too. This happens all the time wherever we're at. But I don't know. I'm not expecting anything. Maybe I don't know. Something comes too often for me. That's what I know.
Yeah.
Sorry for that.
So what else can no problem. I can't remember my train of thought, but what else can I tell you about myself?
No, it sounds like that was we were just talking about you being a CEO, and that's not like, you're not embracing the old stuffy title, and what you're more exemplary of is, being the head cheerleader, and it's not beneath you to participate in something such as sweeping the floor. And I think that's awesome. So I think that also just speaks to why, if I go on Glassdoor, I read about this great culture. Why, what I also thought was pretty cool was that I interviewed one of your employees, Kim Harrington, and he just shot us an introduction with nothing in between it, right? He didn't tell you why we were being introduced or anything like that. And what was cool is, like, he just said, "Yeah, I'm in," right? He didn't call you up and say, "Hey, this guy, that thing, and are you interested?" He just put the two of us together and you jumped in. And I think that also speaks to just kind of the person that you are.
Yeah, like I said, you have to take risk in life, right? I mean, I took a risk when I asked my wife out on, our first date, and, thank goodness she said yes.
Right. How long have you been married?
Gosh, we're a little over 11 years now.
Congratulations.
11 years. Yeah, thank you.
You got it, man.
Thank you. I finally settled down with a good one. She's beautiful, smart, also works with me, which, it's a true family organization when you work with your wife.
Yes.
But she's an amazing partner in what we do.
That's awesome. Hey there. Sorry for this brief interruption. I want to say thank you for tuning into this podcast, and I hope that you're truly enjoying the guests that I have on today. I also want to make sure that you are aware that Fatherhood for the Rest of Us offers personal one-on-one coaching. If you are a father out there who's been afraid or don't know what the next step is to take for you and your ideal version of life, reach out to me. Let's have the conversation. We'll see if you and I are a good fit. And if you are, I just want to help you. I want to serve you and get you to where you want to go, right? I'm not trying to get you from A to Z. I just need to help you to get to your next step. And if I can help you do that, man, it's going to be amazing. And you'll see that you'll be up and running after those first couple of steps. If you are ready to take that next step, then head on over to reconstruct.brandonhanley.com and pick a time. There's a few Pines hostels available. If you don't find something that meets your timeline, reach out to me via email, brandon@fatherhoodfortherestofus.com, and let's have that conversation. We'll see if it's a good fit. I want to help you get to the level that you want to get to. I would chase that rabbit hole, but I'm not going to do it this time. So what's cool is, like, we already talked a little bit about the things about your father, and how you got involved with the business due to your father. How are you finding the time to dedicate to family, or spend with your children as an owner and running this business?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. It's tough,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel I have a responsibility to everybody I work side by side with, and then I have a responsibility at home, and first as a husband to my wife, and then as a father to my children. Um, it can be challenging. We have, from a very young age, been very open with our children about what we do. Mommy and daddy own a business, and this is what we do. This is how we make money, and this is how we are able to do the things that we do, and those types of things, and really trying to help them to understand that it's, you have to work to get where you want to go in life, and to kind of instill that entrepreneurial spirit in them. It would be a dream of mine if both of my children were entrepreneurs one day and started their own businesses. I'd love to see that, and I'd love to be involved with it if they'd let me,
Right, 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 yeah.
and be able to teach them some of the things that I've learned throughout the years. But it is a challenge. We bring our kids know our office. They know where every rubber band is in our office, because every time they come in, they go and steal them.
Right.
They've spent hours when school is closed. They've spent the whole day in our conference room. They know how to work our copiers and do all those types of
Right,
things that
right,
kids like to do. So they've just kind of grown up around it. I don't think they know any different. We do make a concerted effort between my wife and I to set aside time to also be very involved in school. So whether it be, field trips or clubs or different coaching, when coaching opportunities comes up, between us, we try to we do make the time to be involved in that respect also.
right. What is like one or two things you found uh, while facing some of these challenges to spend all that time? What is one or two things that has been the most successful for you?
Um, hmm. Yeah, I have to think hard on that one, because there's probably been more failures than successes. But we are both, my wife and I, Emily and I, are nature lovers. We love to get out into nature. We're fortunate enough to live in Northern Virginia, which is right along the Appalachian Trail. So um, we love to get out on the weekends with our dog and our two kids, and hit the Appalachian Trail, where there's no Wi-Fi, no computers, no other distractions other than maybe a squirrel that runs across your path and your dog goes for it.
Right.
And we found that it's those moments where, if you remove all of the other distractions, that you can have real conversations with your kids.
Right.
You can get to know, you know, hear about their friends and what's going on in school and what they're struggling with. It's not uncommon for my son to share, a problem that he's encountered with a friend at school, and my daughter to chime in and offer probably a better solution than my wife or I could.
Mm.
And I don't think that would necessarily happen if we were at home and their iPads were in their laps and the TV was on and that type of thing. So that's kind of an environment. I think for us, it's creating an environment that takes a lot of the distractions away, and allows us to just be a family together and engaged with one another.
No, that's awesome. Be able to spend that time without all the distractions, because I mean there's so many, right? Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, the iPad and all the screens. Another thing that you mentioned is that this is coming from, I asked you to fill out a sheet. I believe a child's education should be 50% academic and 50% experiential. Challenging yourself
Yeah.
outside your comfort zone. Like you gave some examples of mountaineering, travel, rafting, climbing, wilderness exploring.
Yeah.
You talk about this being an example to your children, as being able to overcome almost any obstacle. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know if you feel like expanding on that at all.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I am always pushing myself, and I've always been a little bit of an adventure seeker. Most of my life, I'd be the first one to jump off the bridge, those types of things.
Right.
Um, but I wanted to make sure that my kids um, weren't afraid of taking risk, whether they be professional risks or friendship risk, or being afraid to ask the girl out and those types of things. I mean, hopefully that hasn't happened yet for my son, but when it does come, we're going to have that conversation.
Right.
And the worst thing she can say is no, right?
Right. Yeah.
But but there are some symbolic things. This past summer, I just climbed Mount Rainier with a great group of friends, and while my children weren't there to climb by my side, certainly it was something that we talked a lot about as they saw me training.
Right.
That they fully understood every little bit of that climb. I mean, to the point where we were on Google Earth one evening looking at the mountain, looking at the route that I was going to take to get up to the peak. I wanted them to kind of live it with me.
Right.
And for them to understand that it was, it's going to be challenging. And if, it's okay if daddy doesn't make it to the top, that it's okay, but I tried.
Right.
I'm going to come home just as happy whether I, was able to summit or if I wasn't able to summit. At least I tried. And so sharing those types of experiences with my kids have been key. And I've seen it, even not even with my children, but with my wife and I, and we both will push each other outside of our comfort zones. And I think that's what makes, our partnership so great. There are things that, I'm uncomfortable with that she pushes, pushes me, into certain situations, and vice versa. And I would hope she'd say that I'm a better man because of that, and vice versa.
Right on.
But we do that with our kids too. I mean, we'll as much as they can, where we're a little restricted to their age, but we do a lot of adventure, and we'll take our kids, kayaking on the weekends, or we spend a lot of time camping with friends, and things that aren't necessarily maybe some of my peers are like, oh, I can't believe you went out and slept in a tent for 5 days, or, whatever it may be,
Right.
where they're taking their families to the Ritz-Carlton for the weekend. Don't get me wrong. We do those nice things too, but I want my
Sure.
kids to experience everything.
Sure. No, that's
Um,
awesome.
and so they don't take anything for granted. And going back to the comment about, education, I believe education is 50% academic and 50% experiential. It might not be a popular opinion with the school district, but I have no problem in pulling my children out to go and travel if we can go somewhere. I mean, just a few weeks ago, we pulled the kids out for a week of school, and we toured Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons. And I mean, there's millions of learning opportunities if you're not afraid to take your kids and expose them to it, and
Right.
it's not the, going to Disney for a weekend type stuff. It's walking the mountains, looking at the geysers. It's in the evening sitting down at a table and writing in a journal about what you saw, what you learned today, those types of things. And that's what I mean by experiential, getting them out so they can see and touch and feel things, expose them to different cultures, travel the world with them, so they don't take things for granted. So they understand that, that things just aren't given to you because of who you are, or you know what family you're in. So it's that type of thing. And that's what I mean by experiential.
I got you.
Get
I
out
got
there, see the world.
get out there and do something with them and
Yeah.
for yourself too. I, I I haven't always been the most active person myself until probably this past year, and I ran a triathlon this year, and a lot of the same reasons as what you're explaining here, just so that the children can see me go actually do something and then know that it's a challenge. I got off the bike and my youngest son came over. He's like, "Dad, you're gonna finish last." I was like, "Get back in the car." you know, I was like, the important thing is here that like, if I finish, I do finish it, and that was big for me to do. But the same thing is like
Good for you.
I want them to see that you got to kind of challenge yourself in different areas, not just at your job, not just in the yard, not just at home, but like give yourself some other challenges, and then the camping and whatnot that you're talking to and exposing them to other elements. That those are all things. Those experiences are going to be the things that they remember later in life. I know that I did growing up as a child. Those experiences helped shape who I am today. So I'm glad that I had them, and I want to be sure that they get
Yeah,
them as well. Yeah, so that's awesome.
absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
I know we talked a little bit about your father that you met later. Did you have a father figure while you were growing up?
My father figure, at grade school years and even high school for me was really my maternal grandfather.
Okay.
He had a fairly successful career and was able to retire early. So he was my guy. He was the guy that I would spend hours in the garage learning how to um, learning how to build things and work on cars. And he was an awesome woodworker. And side by side with him, he was my outlet. I probably didn't have those conversations about, say, girls with him, or struggles with friends.
Sure.
um, he taught me more things about the bigger life lessons.
Right.
Things like what's it like to be a man. And I really cherish those times. He's since passed away, and it still holds a very special place in my heart. But he was the guy that that I could reach out to, and we would spend hours together. Sometimes not even saying a word to each other, but he was teaching me.
I know.
And you don't meet many of those people in your life, and he was certainly one of them.
That's awesome. So no, it's great that you had so you had a type of role model. I did not have a father. My grandfather was actually probably very similar to what you're describing as well. He was in my life as well, like that. What is like one or two things that you would kind of take forward from maybe what your grandfather taught you that you're teaching your children?
Probably humility.
Okay.
Stay, stay humble. Um, don't get too carried away. I mean, um, one of his uh, one of his famous sayings to me, we used to joke around quite a bit, that I was like, "You better watch out, Grandpa. I'm going to beat you up someday." And he would say, "You and what army?"
Yeah.
Basically telling me that there's no way that I could ever take him physically. And it would take a whole army to him. And so it was set that type of, hey, you're never too big. Don't, we both put our pants on the same way, one leg at a time. Everybody does it. Don't ever be intimidated by somebody because of the house they live in, or the job that they have, or the car that they drive. They're just like any other man that you're going to encounter. So just don't be afraid. And I think that's really what's given me. I can walk up to anybody on the street. I don't care who they are, or if they're famous, or they're a homeless man on the street. I'm going to treat everybody the same way, with dignity and respect, and not take things for granted, and just talk to them as a man.
That's great. No, that's a wonderful thing to carry forward, and absolutely to teach your children. One of the things that One of the things I ask often, did faith of a religion or any type of that, go to church, any of that as a child or now?
Religion didn't play a huge part in my childhood. I would certainly go to church on, all of the big events, the Christmas Eve services, the Easter services. But I wasn't, I kind of hopped in and out of religion, uh, based on what period of my life. And I will tell you, I married a very religious woman, and who goes to church at a minimum once a week. And that was an issue when we were dating and talking about our futures together. And religion's a big part of her life, and it wasn't one of my priorities at that point. But my commitment to her was that I will support her um, in her beliefs. And I think it's important, as with children anyways, to to give them the experience to get to know about religion and who God is. So if down the road that they make a decision that maybe they're going to be less religious or more religious, at least they have a basis to be able to make a good decision. What frustrates me sometimes is people who have never really been exposed to religion that are so anti-religion, but they don't have really any basis to make that decision other than what they see in the press or the news and that type of thing. So for me, it's all about support. My wife is Catholic, so my kids go to CCD, and we talk about religious. I help them with their homework that they get from the church, and we study, and quite honestly, I'm learning more about God today as a father from my children than I ever learned as a student of the church.
That's cool. How do you feel like it's playing? What kind of role do you feel like that's playing now, for your children and as a father?
I think for my children, I think it gives them a great basis of um, leading a moral and good life. Um, so if you kind of look at it like a three-legged stool, they have their friends who are influencing them. They have my wife and I as parents who are influencing them, and now I truly believe that they feel like they have the church that's influencing them. And I know for at least for my wife and I, we're doing our best to instill good values. I believe that the church is instilling good values. So and so far so good with on the friend side. So I think they've got a good
Right
they've got
on.
a good standing there. But
Nice.
but later in life, maybe when one of those legs of the stool um, isn't the best influence, they're going to have two that they can rely on. All right. So
Right.
um, so I think that's maybe not right now having as much influence on them, but down the road being able to reflect back and look at some of the concepts that the church has taught them, and what really help them in future, in the future being able to make good decisions. And then, like I said, just as for me, the second part of your question, as for me, it's kind of experiencing church through my children.
Right.
It's neat to see, because I'm maybe not as religious
Right.
as my wife is. But it's neat for me. I get excited just like they get excited when I see my daughter take her first communion was a touching moment for me,
Right.
even though I don't take communion in the church. So,
Sure. Right.
um, it's touching. It's neat to see that, and um, I think I'm really lucky and blessed that my wife has, um, kind of has supported my decision to not be maybe as religious as she is.
Yeah.
I think there are some people that, it could have gone the other way,
Yeah, I
right?
was
She
gonna
could
say
have
that could
said,
go
you
that
need
could
to,
go either way, right? So that's cool.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
One you asked me a question. You asked me, have you, after all these interviews of fathers, have you found one or two traits good fathers share? I'm just going to say, One of them is just showing up. A lot of dads don't participate the way that you do in their children's lives, and most of the people that I've interviewed, they show up and they're present in their children's lives. They're very active in what they're doing. Sounds like that's something that you're also doing by being active, taking them out, giving them all these experiences, the coaching experiences. Taking that opportunity to actually listen to their children the way you're doing when you're out there on the trails and listening to them. And sounds like you're also just encouraging them to be themselves. It's like a light guiding hand versus, go do all these things that I tell you to do.
Yeah.
It sounded like, talking about you'd love to see them being an entrepreneur or going that route versus I'd like to see them take over my company, right? So those are the things that I hear echoed throughout a lot of what you're saying, but also a lot of these other good dads that I've spoken to. And I also think that, look, we all have room to grow. We all have room to improve. None of us are perfect. And I think that the dads that are striving to make improvements all the time are the ones that I just love talking to and hearing from. Um, that's my answer to that question.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I mean, I'm a firm believer in education and mentoring. I've had personal coaches and business coaches for decades now, and it'd be really neat to have a father coach, somebody that can teach you how to be a better dad. So
Well,
I
which
really
is kind of
appreciate
what I do on the
I really
side,
appreciate
but
what you're doing.
yeah,
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. Yeah,
you know,
it's great, and this is coming. It's so neat too, because I think there are some similarities. I mean, you you didn't really grow up with a true father, right? I mean,
yeah,
we both had father figures, and maybe I don't want to say that's maybe the key to this success, because that sounds terrible. I don't want people to go down that
right, no, yeah,
path,
yeah. Well,
but it
listen,
does make us. It does help us to really recognize it when you see it, right? When I see, I'm blessed to have such great friends and fellow fathers, and I see some things that they're doing, and it's like, wow, that's a great idea. Like I should be doing that, where I think maybe I don't take it for granted. I don't take being a father for granted. It's work, just like marriage is work. You have to put in the time if you want it to work.
yeah, no,
So, and I
absolutely.
think that perspective is maybe a little different for you and I, because we didn't have a dad every night.
No, and,
So
and I agree. But what's been interesting has been the people that do have that have had solid fathers. You can see how that shows up in their lives too. So it's really which makes me want to be that much more, give it that much more for the people that
sure,
had awesome dads. I'm like, and you see the impact that it had on them. Or you also see people that had a dad in their life and they tell the stories of it and whether or not they how they came out of that relationship. And it's
yeah,
very interesting. Look, the role of a father is very powerful, and you recognize it, I recognize it, and any of the dads that I know that recognize it, just put everything into it because it means so much. We're gonna wind it down here though, real quick. I got 3 maybe questions left for you. One is like, you're an avid reader, obviously. I'm guessing by all the coaching, the effort that you put into everything. What's a book that you've gifted the most?
uh, yeah. Typically, it's funny. That's a great question. There's a few books that I gifted the most. There's oh gosh, I'm going to draw a blank. I should have been more prepared. It's a children's book actually
Hmm.
that I give to fellow fathers,
Okay.
and we have a stack of them in our office. And we meet a lot of people because of the advisors that come in. But if I learn that they're a new father,
Uh-huh.
or they've just had a baby, there's a book. And maybe I can follow up with you, and you can put it on your website. I'll send you the link.
Yeah, you can do that.
But it's an illustrated children's book that about a child who basically invents a widget and and creates this thing, and it's all about kind of instilling that entrepreneurial spirit. in a child,
Right.
and so they're not fearful about doing certain things. But it's a children's book actually, and God, I wish I could remember the name, but I can't right now.
I think that it's
I
really
can't
cool that
right
you've got a
now.
stack of them at the office that you're giving out, and again, that's just that speaks more to the culture that you have at your company, and you really do treat it as a family. So that's cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. What I usually flip this question around, but usually ask what you'd like your children to thank you for 10 years from now. But what is like something, I'm going to flip it around and say, what would you thank your children for 10 years from now, or even now? What would you like to thank your children for?
Um, Gosh, I think 10 years from now, and in even so today, I thank my children for making me laugh. I mean, they are um, so funny. I think they have the way they interact with one another, the way I watch them interact with their teachers and their other coaches and their friends. I giggle all the time. You told a story about your son, and you told him after you got done running, and you told him to get back in the car. And, I had a similar story with my son as I was getting ready to climb Mount Rainier, and my son had made me. Both of my children had made me a card, hand wrote a card and drew a picture on the front. And my daughter's was what you would expect from a little girl, very sweet and loving. My son's was, "Come on, Daddy, you can do it." Something like that. It was a nice little rhyme that he wrote. But on the cover of the card was a picture of a mountain and a mountain climber falling off the top of the mountain, laying on the ground, dead with blood falling out and X's on his eyes. This is what I'm reading that slid into my suitcase the day before I'm about to,
Right,
spend 2 days or 3 days climbing this mountain.
right.
And, and that's what he chose to draw on my card. And I'll tell you, climbing that mountain, and a little bit of a metaphor, but climbing that mountain it's probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done. I've climbed a bunch of mountains, but Mount Rainier really kicked my ass.
Huh.
And there are times where you just, it's all about, you're doing everything you can to put one foot in front of another, not
Right.
too far, heel to toe for 16 hours straight, heel to
Wow.
toe, climbing a mountain. It's equivalent to climbing a staircase for 16 hours,
Jeez.
with a few stops. You're burning thousands of calories an hour. You can't get enough food down. You're in an atmosphere where you barely have any saliva. You can't eat nuts because it just turns into like this mush in your mouth that you can't swallow. It's crazy. But you're making deals. Not being so religious, I'm making deals with God. Like, hey, get me to the top and get me down, and I'll be a good man for the rest of my life and everything else. But but being able to reflect back to things about my children in those times, like this is why I'm doing it. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. But then, thinking about the card that my son, the picture on the card that my son drew and gave to me, allowed me to laugh and take 5 more steps when I didn't think I could take another step,
That's
that
great.
type of thing. So
Yeah.
so it's really the humor part. I have so much fun with them.
Awesome. Perfect. Is there anything you feel like I left out here?
No, it sounds great. It's very, very casual. I really appreciate you wanting to learn a little bit about me and my family and our company, and open door anytime you want to come and visit.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you. And hey, let's contact information. Where should anybody, if they want to reach out to you directly, or how would you recommend somebody reach out to you?
Email's the best way. I live on email. So my email is pretty simple, and I don't mind sharing it with anybody. It's jkestler@kestlerfinancial.com. That's JKESTLER@kestlerfinancial.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me directly.
Awesome. Thanks for being here with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much.